It's that time again for the assault on your ears we call Lower Dorks, a Star Trek Lower Decks podcast. I'm Aaron, and with me as always is Stavros. Tonight on our screens is episode... hold on, wait. It's Those Old Scientists. What season is this from again?
So we're actually in episode 7 of season 2 of Strange New Worlds.
Wait, what? That's not Lower Decks. Scope creep! Scope creep! Stavros, do I need to get the stay in your lane bat? Do I, Stavros?
You need to calm down. This is a crossover episode.
Oh, wait, a crossover between animated and live action? Jesus, this is going to be Who Framed Roger Rabbit or Cool World. As long as it's not Enchanted, I think we'll be fine.
No, it's not Enchanted. Let's talk about what we're drinking, shall we?
Yeah, what the fuck are we drinking, Stavros?
I know, it's very green. We're actually having an Orion Hurricane. The Twitter user, X, the X user, the Scorch 1701, posted a recipe for this that we're trying out. There's a lot of stuff in here. We've got some vodka, tequila, gin, white rum, dark rum, green curacao, melon liqueur, lime juice, and club soda. Sadly, there's no real Orion Delac in here, but that's a fictional substance. So
is that why I'm not tripping balls right now?
I think that must be. But if you have enough of this, you'll certainly trip and get alcohol sick. I mean, that's just a given. Funny enough, I could not find green curacao. I went to 3 liquor stores today, and none of them had it. In fact, one liquor store I went today didn't even know what curacao was. Funny story.
Yeah, so that sounds like a liquor store ran by people who don't like liquor.
I think so.
Yeah.
But this drink is actually kind of surprisingly good. I thought it would be kind of an overwhelming liquor situation, but I don't know. I doubled up on the melon liqueur just because I didn't have any curacao.
Yeah.
But it's actually kind of good. I don't know if you want to take shots of this, but it's surprisingly manageable considering
I expected this to be absolutely awful, and it's not terrible. I think they can definitely drop the dark rum, and it'll probably be a lot smoother, and maybe replace the white rum with like a spiced rum, and I think it would be a lot better. You're definitely missing out without the curacao. Fun fact, blue and green curacao are basically the same flavor. I mean, it's barely a difference between them. It's like the difference between eating like California versus Florida oranges. I mean, it's noticeable, but it's the same basic flavor.
That makes sense.
Yes, and now that I've shared my wisdom, I don't know where I was going with that.
We should talk about this episode.
That's right. We're here to talk about a show, not alcohol.
We could do both, but we should talk about the show too.
I'm a little too drunk to do both right now, thank you.
I know, this Orion Hurricane really messes you up if you let it, so. But this episode, I did not write a long synopsis, but suffice to say that when Boimler and Mariner pass through a time portal, they appear in Captain Pike's time and basically almost destroy the timeline. Even though Boimler feels like he tries his best to destroy the timeline. But then you know what? They learn some things along the way, and Boimler and Mariner go back to their own time, and everything's fine. That's the episode synopsis.
It's funny, I was surprised getting into the episode. I thought it was going to be like Boimler and Mariner together wind up in the past. But the narrative
it's a lot of just Boimler solo, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of just Boimler solo, and it is fantastic from beginning to end.
Yeah. Let's talk about the quality, because I think both of us going into this were kind of unsure how well this would go. I mean, Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks are, I think, in my opinion, clearly the best of the modern Treks. But even with that, we were still unsure. But I think it turned out surprisingly good.
When they announced that it wasn't going to be like a Roger Rabbit situation, right. I was a little, more on board for it. But then, I had to take a step back and say, whoa. Does that mean they're just going to do a Cool World thing here? Because I'm not on board for that. But
it's funny. In the Ready Room episode about this, they went through a couple of the cast members, and Anson Mount, Captain Pike, totally thought it was going to be a Roger Rabbit situation, whereas Melissa Navia, who plays Ortegas, thought it just would everyone would be animated.
Yeah, and
they were both
you know
wrong.
what? She did get to be animated in the end. That's my
That's
dream.
true.
I just want to be animated. Can somebody animate me?
Hey, you do a great job on the episode art. I think that's enough. Someone needs to just
Aw,
take that art and
thank
animate it. But interesting thing about this episode, this is the first Strange New Worlds that Jonathan Frakes has directed, and he has directed like every Trek show since Next Gen.
Well, and not even just
to some
Trek,
degree.
but like he has a very prodigious history of directing, and
Definitely.
albeit I haven't seen a lot of his, directing credits because just it's so expansive. But like, man, he has done so much good stuff. And I'm going to focus on the Trek stuff because, this podcast is about Star Trek.
Supposedly that's what we're talking about right now.
Supposedly.
Yeah.
But, I still hold up that, like, Insurrection is not a well-liked movie, right?
Yeah.
But I think it would have been, like, an even bigger flop without Frakes' direction. Like, there was so much awkward writing in that, so much poor story, so many just awkward one-liners, right? That honestly, if it wasn't for like his good pacing and good, just scene setting, First Contact is often held up as one of the best Star Treks. And
yeah, definitely.
Honestly, it's good. Dialogue's good, pacing's good, story's good. It has some flaws, but all of that set aside, so much of the tension, so much of the drama is entirely in scene setting and pacing. And, you're dealing with great actors who have been working together for a long time. But, man, it's not just that movie. You can see it in everything Frakes does. He knows how to deliver a scene.
Yeah. He's like the pro when it comes to Trek TV in particular now. I mean, he has that reputation that two takes Frakes. So, I mean, he knows what he's doing and knows what he wants. And I was, again, from the Writer Room episode, they kind of pitched it as like every episode of Strange New Worlds is like has its own flavor. And they approached this, or at least he did, like a comedy. And I mean, the writing is obviously that, but you can tell his direction was clearly one of like a comedy versus the other Strange New Worlds episodes. And it definitely comes out that way.
Yeah. And it's so funny too, because there are like slides into drama all throughout it. And they are just
absolutely
stellar. Those moments. And like, he uses like so... I don't know if this is Frakes. This could be the editors. This could be producers. This could be anybody involved. But he uses like there's horror moments, right? They're not actual horror in the scene, but he uses horror tropes to comedic effect. And we'll talk about it later, but just such a fantastic, well put together... You know what? I'm being an idiot now. Take a step back. I'm fanboying too much.
You know what?
Fucking...
When we have a show about a podcast about a show, then these kinds of things are going to happen.
Fucking the crew of the Enterprise are going to, talk about me behind my back and my fucking constant fanboying.
How'd you feel about the sandwich of the caps, front and back caps of the episode being animated, but the majority of the midsection being live action? Was that the way to go here?
So when it started in the Lower Decks universe and everything was animated, fantastic. Right. Loved it. And I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. And then when they translate through to the Strange New Worlds, that going live action really worked. And I don't think it would have worked if they had remained with Boimler and Mariner being animated.
Yeah, there was no Roger Rabbiting this. I don't think it would have been too goofy.
And it's I don't know whether it was intentional or just sheer luck that the actors are close enough to their characters that it works.
Well, both
right?
Probably.
It's actually funny though, when I was watching this, I'm all like, man, these actors, they seem too old to be playing the characters in live action. And then I had to take a step back and I'm all like, Mariner actually has to be at least 30, right? Like, there's no way, like, despite her exuberance and, her animated personality, she's not, a 20-year-old or a 19-year-old. And it's all like, maybe they look just fine in their roles.
Now that you mention it, let's talk more about how Tawny Newsome and Jack Quaid work as the live-action Boimler and Mariner. Funny story, they mentioned in that Writing Room episode, Tani says that they like very purposefully have left their ages, nebulous. They're kind of like 20s or 30s. But I guess in Trek, I mean, you obviously graduate, officers graduate the academy into being ensigns, but it's not like there aren't like older ensigns and lieutenants in Starfleet. They kind of make it work.
There's been a number of like episodes where they've shown people who are accomplished in their own cultures, and then they join Starfleet, right? That's Shax's story, right?
Yeah.
He was a Bajoran resistance fighter, and he joined Starfleet after that. So he had to be older. I mean, albeit he could have been younger. Yeah. Because, resistance fighters start young, but...
Yeah. I mean, he's gray, right? I mean, and he's just, quote-unquote, just a lieutenant, so...
Yeah, but some people remain lieutenants their whole career. I mean, alternate Picard from the...
That's right.
The worst episode of TNG.
Oh, we've just lost the whole rest of our audience.
You know what? If they thought that episode was good and insightful, we don't need them.
Oh God. Oh, one thing is interesting is both Tawny Newsome and Jack Quaid are really tall. Tawny Newsome tweeted recently that she's 5'10". Jack Quaid must be like the internet. I tried to Google this and it's kind of unclear. He's got to be at least like 6'2", maybe taller.
It's super weird that we live in a world where we're Googling people's heights.
I know.
What the fuck? Like, that's some stalker shit. But in the context of this, it's great blocking, staging, and design where they always look short compared to the officers on board the Enterprise.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because if you really pay attention to some of those hallway scenes, you can just see just how giant they are. But you're right, like they really make an effort to have them. Like there's that scene in the briefing room where they're pitching them about the that metal in the NX Enterprise, and they're standing in front of them instead of sitting, just to maybe make sure that the little height difference there is kind of disguised.
Yeah,
but it's funny because both Boimler and Mariner are shorter compared to characters like Ransom on Lower Decks.
Yeah,
so,
and that's the whole point is to like play up the whole they're young and inexperienced, they're the junior officers. So creating that height difference is a way of visually telling that story, which you do a lot more. Well, I mean, I guess you do it in all mediums, but it's harder to do on screen. Although, modern filming techniques, modern just you can make a freaking Hobbit out of a normal-sized human being.
That's right. It can be done. Something else interesting. Tawny Newsome had mentioned that she and McMahon had talked about how to make Mariner's hair look more like the show, because they've obviously gone to great lengths to emulate the look of the show.
Yes.
From Lower Decks to Strange New Worlds. And curls was Tawny Newsome's suggestion, and McMahon was like, of course curls. So I don't know if she had curled her hair for that or if that's a wig in the show. I'm not really super familiar with how Tawny Newsome usually looks. I mean, obviously not that, but they went the curls route, and I think it's surprisingly congruous to the animated version.
Yeah, I definitely thought it worked really, really well.
Yeah,
it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't exactly match or translate to the animated show, but most hairstyles don't. You can say the same thing about Boimler, right? They did a great job at recreating his hair, but it's obviously not the hair he has when he's animated.
Yeah. If you recall, when they first showed those like costume, like Lower Decks costumes at a recent con, Jack Quaid just put on like a ridiculous like wig, like a purple wig.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, wait, are they going to do that in Lower Decks? But no, they just I don't know, was that a wig or did they dye his hair? I can't tell. But it's not like ridiculous.
Yeah. Although I'll tell you what they did dye. His eyebrows. I don't know if you noticed that.
100%.
Purple eyebrows. Yeah. So, so much for dyeing his hair. Unless he dyes his eyebrows as well. I mean, jeez, can you imagine?
Yeah, I guess so. He must. He said he dyes it, so as upset as I am that's the canon, yes, he dyes his eyebrows. One other funny thing is Tawny Newsome mentioned in this Ready Room episode again that her rolled up sleeves in live action are not actually rolled up. The sleeves just end there, and they added a little strip of fabric to make it look rolled up.
Yeah,
so it's like just a little short sleeve costume that she's wearing there. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, that fabric that their uniforms are made of would not look good rolled up.
No, it would be much thicker than.
Yeah, you would need like the only thing you can really roll up and have it look decent is really, really light fabric, right?
One detail that they got done really well, which you can see at least in the first sickbay scene with Boimler, is the underside of the boots. They've got the little deltas on them.
Yeah, I didn't know if you were going to pick up on that, but then I should have realized you and your weird shoe fetish.
This show has broken my brain. It's I've got the stop motion going on. But yeah, that was a cool little detail.
It was. They put a lot of effort into the design of this episode.
Totally. And one interesting thing about this, so even back to the first promo shots of Jack Quaid and Tawny Newsome as Boimler and Mariner, I always had thought that like the black shoulders on Boimler, on Jack Quaid, just looked too low. And it's bugged me ever since the promo images. When the show starts, I noticed it as well. But you know what? I think this is just a side effect of Jack Quaid being freakishly tall. Because the color, like in order to match the colors of the animated character, they have to go down that low. He just has like a freakishly long torso, I think, is the problem here.
You know, it's weird that you mentioned that.
Am I crazy?
No, because in all of the promo shots, I had the same sensation. But most of the time when he's on screen, it actually looks fine.
Fine. Yeah, I think just like the chest up, I forget what you call that, like a portrait shot or something like that. Just when you can just see like the mid chest and up, it just looks weird, right? Because the proportion seems off. But then you look at his whole body and you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
And honestly, most of the scenes, they're framed well enough to where you don't notice it, right?
Yeah. I think where I'm going with this is Jack Quaid's too freaking tall. That's
I think me and Jack Quaid are actually the same height, so thanks a lot, man. Appreciate your vote of confidence there.
That makes me believe this even more. Just putting that out there. Anything else you noticed about Jack Quaid? About Jack Quaid and Tawny Newsome?
So not so much in the show, right? Like there's tons of awesome moments in the show, but one of the things I noticed is that when they were like, there's so many great moments, like, oh, that's Boimler to a T. It's even like the right body language. Yeah. But turns out that's not in the script. It's not directed. That was 100% Jack Quaid trying to be Boimler in live action. Which is just fantastic. He does such a great job.
At some point in the Red Room episode, Tawny Newsome and Jack Quaid are just like, yeah, we just like threw everything we could in, and if they didn't cut it, that's up to them.
There's that one scene where Jack Quaid does the Boimler power walk away.
Yeah.
And it is like
amazing.
That has got to be like the most uncomfortable walk in the world. He is so exaggerated. And initially I was all like, I can't even imagine how many takes it took to get that. But it sounds like that was just something he did in that scene.
And Frakes loved it.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, keep it in. It's such a thing that's like in the background too. It's on screen for like half a second, just like he's got the ass shake and everything, man. He's really dedicated.
Yeah.
I loved it. Let's move on to the opening credits. I was surprised when they went the animated route.
Oh, it was so
surprised.
good.
It was amazing.
Oh my God. Fantastic. Just beautiful.
You can tell there's some YouTubes out there that compare the standard Strange New World Season 2 intro with the Lower Decks crossover ones. It is like pretty darn close. There are some things that are like very slightly different. But yeah, very close. I was surprised. I thought that was a joke in and of itself. It was great.
I would never go back and do the in-depth comparison, but it doesn't surprise me that is spot on one-to-one recreation.
It is quite good.
Yeah, just so beautiful. I do want to say one thing, though, going back to the animated versus live action. So in the beginning, we see the Cerritos pull up to the planet, right? And it is this absurd, ridiculous, like, only an animation planet, right? With the energy
with stuff in the atmosphere.
and the weird atmosphere. And I'm like, oh, God, like, what is this going to look like in live action? And it looks amazing in live action.
It really was.
God, they did such a fantastic job translating everything. Totally not believable. Like, I have no idea how, like, they beam down in live action. It's like this calm surface while how high up the planet is this roiling nightmare of flowing energy, and you're just like, not believable. Not believable.
I know, that looks good. How about the space bug in the animated intro sequence?
I know, fantastic.
Did you notice that in that one shot where the space bug like pulls off the Enterprise for some reason, the lighting turns off? So apparently it's canon. It's only lit up when it's sucking on the nacelle, I guess.
I didn't notice that. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was just too enthralled with the beauty of it all.
I'm just saying we learned a little bit more about space bug in this episode. I just hope we learn even more at some point. We even get the koala there at the end. Very, very highlighted. Strangely highlighted considering how much of a back joke it is.
Yeah, it was not subtle enough. Like, seeing the koala should have been like, oh shit, there's the koala. But like in this, there's no way you could miss it.
Yeah, because you're staring at the show logo at that point, so your eye's going to wander.
Makes me sad. Well, not even that. It's just like it's a very clear. It's just the outline. I don't know. It stands out way too much.
You wish it was a little bit more subtle.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I get. Yeah. There's one thing I noticed. I mean, we're gonna have to talk about this more off the air, but in one of the sequences, when the lights are turning on the Enterprise in the beginning, there's I think the first shot or one of the first shots of the lights turning on. In the animated version, it's like the red stripe on the hull, I think on the engineering hull, which you can see clearly in the live action, or I'm sorry, in the animation. But in the live action, you can't really see it. And I don't know if I need to like turn up the brightness on my monitor or something so I can see it, but I'm wondering if it's a difference in the model of the live action versus the animated version of the Enterprise that they used for the opening credits.
It's definitely a difference. I don't think it really matters. I'm betting it's just a difference between the lighting where the animated and the CG is, I don't know, maybe it is different. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell because it is very dark. I think there's more you can do with lighting in actual CG versus animation, it feels like, because there are certain like subtle differences.
Yeah. Well, and they were also definitely trying to recreate the Lower Decks style animation, and that really doesn't bode well or doesn't translate well to severe darkness, I guess is what I would say.
That's one of those things. But still, overall, I thought it was amazing. Like the 1-to-1 accuracy for the most part. Actually, it's funny. The shot where the space bug first shows up, that's one of the shots. I know we're getting into like really detailed territory here, but the shot of the Enterprise kind of going through the clouds and it's his first shot where the space bug shows up. It's actually much more of a close-up view in the animated version. I assume because they want to be able to see more detail on the actual space bug.
Yeah, that is more detail than you needed to go into, dude.
How dare you? It's exactly the right amount of detail. Let's move on. I want to talk more about the fourth wall breakage because there is a shit ton of that in this episode.
Is there? Did I miss this?
Absolutely. Let's see. Yeah, so the just don't look joke with where Boimler gets like caught up in the like cabling. I mean, that's not something that you would really see in a live action.
But I don't think that's necessarily like fourth wall because that is something that I loved. Because that is very much something that happens in the animated series, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, that was something that happened in animation.
I think we've actually seen that in Lower Decks, but I'm not 100% certain. So don't hold me to that.
It seems like something that Boimler would
In fact, cut me saying that out in case I'm wrong. Just remove it. I don't need the people telling me, well, actually. That's my job. I say, well, actually, people.
I mean, there's so much of this. There's the Mariner and Boimler talking on the shuttle and they mentioned how everyone on the Enterprise talks all slowly and quietly.
Oh my god!
Because obviously there's a difference there.
Fantastic. We've actually talked about this before about the difference.
Yeah, definitely.
And I remember at one point we were wondering if a part of that was a product of like episode length. When you have an hour-long episode, you can do so many more beauty shots. You can draw out conversations. You can do these long, subtle, ponderous exchanges. But when you have a half hour, every moment is at a premium.
Yeah, Absolutely. So you have to kind of get that dialogue out there.
Which, led to this great joke. So I'm okay with that dichotomy.
Yeah. And I'm just going to keep going down these fourth wall breaking jokes. There's another scene where number one calls out Mariner and Boimler just making weird specific references to things.
Yes, their references are oddly specific.
Oddly specific, yes. That's another thing. There's one of the ending scenes where Ransom kind of hits on number one on Boimler's poster, and of course we know in the real world that Jerry O'Connell is married to Rebecca Romaine, who plays number one. So
okay, so like I guess we know that. Today I learned, apparently. Yeah, man, my jealousy of Jerry O'Connell grows.
I know. That guy.
On the one hand, I love that dude as a actor. His career is fantastic. On the other hand, I really want to punch him in the face for being everything I'm not.
Absolutely. And then finally, we've got Mariner and Boimler's just constant, like, under their breath jokes. Like, oh, look, the ranks on the sleeves.
Yeah.
Oh, look, they've got the old-timey communicator. Oh, do you think we're going to get stuck in the dystopian San Francisco? And Hot Young Spock. I mean, I don't know if you can really call these as fourth wall breakage, but I mean, it's in line with the Lower Decks like jokes style of like the Fast and Furious, like referential jokes.
Yes, that is 100% what's going on. Yeah, you know what? I love those constant callbacks, and like there's even visual gags too, right? I love when they're attempting to talk to Pike about his like, hey, you don't know what's coming. You should spend time with the people you care about. And he's like, oh, I know what's coming. I've seen the future. And Mariner, like, pantomimes the chair and the facial scars. And it's just like, oh, my God. And it's so Mariner, too, right?
Yeah.
Like, just really well written. Jack Quaid is really on point through the entire episode with being Boimler. But... Tony does like a lot of really weird like hand movements that just kind of made me go.
She's very hand active.
Oh, she's very hand active, which Mariner is in the series, right?
In the show.
But there is this scene, and it just drives me batty, where they're talking about Boimler's all like, "Oh, we're gonna have to go live off the grid and not affect history," and Mariner's all like,
"I need the grid.
I need the grid. Yeah. I thrive on the grid." And her hand motions are just super awkward and bothered me to no end. And I have no idea why.
You have some hand problems.
Yeah,
maybe. A negative experience with that.
I don't know what it is about the hand motion she's making. It really bothered me. And it's so absurd that I am bothered by it.
I know. That's a strange thing to be bothered by. It's funny, you liked the pantomiming of the chair and the facial scars, but you didn't like the whatever's going on in that scene.
Apparently I like pantomiming of tragedy, but
hand motions are only okay when you're pantomiming. That's what I'm getting.
Yes, that's 100% what it is. I don't know. It really bothered me, that scene, so much.
Let's talk about this show's homages to Enterprise, of which there are many.
Okay, before we get into this, we have to make a tacit agreement.
Yes.
This is a show about Lower Decks.
Yes.
So, we're not going to derail into Enterprise. We're not going to talk about how much of a dick everyone on that series was in the beginning. At no point
maybe a little bit
will we break into a duet of Faith of the Heart as much as we want to. There is not enough time for that.
No. That'll extend our show by like 3 minutes. Or 2 minutes.
You know what? We'll do it someday. You and me, brother.
We're just gonna release it as a standalone episode. It'll be great. It'll get 5 hits, and 2 of them will be me.
You know what? I appreciate you doing that for me, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But
God. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Enterprise in this. In the cold open, they reference it.
Yes, it is the Chekhov's gun of the episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my God, I was so blown away by that. I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, oh, neat, and Enterprise reference. Although, did they really use whatever that substance was in Enterprise? And then lo and behold, yes, it's an important part of this episode.
So hang on. So why did they use it in the NX class, but it was such a rare material that there is no more left in the entire quadrant?
Oh, God damn it. They explained it in the episode, dude. You're supposed to remember things.
Do they, though?
I'm supposed to crack wise. Come on.
I know. I'm just saying it's a little strange. I appreciate the reference though. It's good. I also like they bring up the grappler, and apparently La'an is a big fan of the grappler, which I can totally understand. The grappler is really good. Get that early 2000s CG. And apparently, I don't know if you noticed, we haven't done an episode on the season 4 trailer yet, but there appears to be a grappler of some kind in the season 4 trailer. We're gonna talk more about that in the future.
Oh, well, I mean, better a grappler than a dupler, I guess.
Is a dupler ever a good thing? Probably not. Anyway, we're talking about Enterprise right now. But yeah, you're totally right. Turns out to be the Chekhov's gun. It's all over the place in this episode. I like how Ortegas is, I like Travis Mayweather.
Yeah, and that is how I know that Ortegas is a liar. Like, I somewhere down the line, it's going to be revealed that she lied about her background, and she is not who she claims to be. She's like a Klingon in disguise or some bullshit like that. Because nobody's a fan of Mayweather! He did nothing the entire series. Even in the Mayweather episodes, he wasn't important. He was so much character potential.
Hey man, he says their high school's gym is named after him, so that's the level of fame that he has achieved.
I know we said we weren't going to go into Enterprise, but great character concept, great actor cast to play the character who portrays it well. He's a dude who is he loves space, and he's very like childlike in his demeanor in the beginning, and they do nothing with him. So
we're not going to get into Enterprise, like you said.
Oh, God. Yeah, thanks for stopping me, dude.
You're so upset.
This has been my TED Talk about Travis Mayweather.
There is a whole lot of Enterprise in this episode. To be honest, it doesn't get... I mean, Lower Decks usually all about references. Not a lot of Enterprise references in there. I'm glad to start seeing the Enterprise crew talk about that in this episode. It was kind of refreshing in a way.
Yeah,
I do appreciate it.
Maybe we'll get more of that in the future. I love the fact, though, that, like, so Boimler and Mariner fanboy and fangirl about, back to the TOS era, all the things in between. And then we go back to the TOS era, and they're fanboy and fangirling over the Enterprise era.
Yeah, it's good.
Sadly, still no Zephram Cochrane references. Which is weird, because
is that what you're really looking forward to? There
was lots of drinking in this episode. You think there would have been at least one, knocks him back like Zephram Cochrane.
Yeah. Should we talk about let's talk about the drinking now. I mean, we're drinking Hurricanes right now, and
are we? My glass is...
there's no Delac.
Well,
there's no real Orion Delac.
My glass is empty. I got to refill one sec. Continue on. I will be refilling over here.
What was I going to say about this? I mean, they work in the animated joke with the actual Orion Delac. Are they just... is the crew just going to be, like, poisoned at the beginning of the next episode? Or all recovering from hallucinogens?
You know what? I don't know, but the scene made it all worthwhile.
Just getting them all in animation was worth it.
Yeah, I love the Spock. My arm doesn't normally do this. His arm is doing the like rubber band snake
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
You know what's hilarious about Boimler showing up in live action? He squeezes in the Boimler scream. It's not quite as crazy as it is in the animated show, but there are definitely Boimler screams happen. At least 3 different occasions. The ones I noted were when he's picked up the pad in the lounge, and Nurse Chapel and Ortegas kind of sneak up on him and he screams. And then the second time in Spock's lab when there's like the explosion, he screams in there. And when he's caught by La'an in the shuttlecraft later. There's minimum of 3 Boimler screams in this episode.
Yeah, fantastic.
And getting them snuck in. To be honest, if you kind of blink or if you're not paying attention, you kind of miss it. And I love that they found a way to get the animated, the kind of the over the top animated screamy, kind of getting it to show up in a reasonable fashion in live action was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Although now I suddenly want to sidetrack here. So,
yes.
One of the big things...
Sidetrack?
Really? I am a hiker who goes where the trail leads me, my friend.
Okay. Going where the Orion Hurricane leads you. Go ahead.
Anyways, so, you mentioned the whole Boimler getting approached by Chapel and
yes.
Ortegas.
Is that the trope of, like, Boimler being strangely, like, women appealing?
I don't...
Is that
I think you're
appealing?
reading too much into that scene.
Okay.
But
okay.
I think I like, my whole thing is I'm taking it the other way, right? So there's that scene, and in that scene they're like messing with the newbie, and they actually do references in that scene to the past, and then later we see Uhura and Ortegas make references to the NX era, and that makes me think that in Lower Decks, it's just non-stop. They're talking about, these inspirational figures from the past. And that's really what it is. Yeah. It's always played as, like, for the audience, it's nostalgia bait, right? But for the characters, it's them talking about these inspirational characters who, as, like, they are emulating, they are inspired by. Those scenes in this episode makes me like, oh, shit. Lower Decks is just a window into that part of the normal characters' lives when they're not stuck in crazy, high stakes, missions. It's not the characters when they're at their career moment where they need to be serious and be serious officers. It's those scenes that happen in between. And it implies that this happens with everybody, right? And we see it in, like, other series. There's always callbacks and references. But they're not non-stop like they are in Lower Dorks. And in Lower Dorks, they're non-stop.
Lower Decks. Lower Decks is us.
Remember? Wait. Oh, right. Yes. God, man. In Lower Decks.
That Hurricane's really getting to you.
Yeah. God. In Lower Decks, those non-stop references are because there are people at the beginning of their career, right? They're focused on, they're starting their career, they're doing things, but they
want to be.
Yeah, they're focused on what they want to be, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just, I really like that portrayal. I thought that was really a good, makes Lower Decks seem slightly ridiculous.
But just slightly, right? Like, it puts them into context, I think. Is what
I think we've established that I like the ridiculousness.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Let's talk about Pike's handling of Boimler. I don't know if you noticed, but there's like this recurring joke in this episode where Pike just thinks Boimler is completely out of his mind or ridiculous. And it starts really simply with the sickbay scene and Boimler waking up, where Pike is just like, number one's just like, do you think you know something about me? And Pike's just like, and then the scene just cuts to the next one. And then it goes from that to, I feel like I'm stopping a toddler from knocking over furniture. And then it goes to Boimler, like calling out Boimler, like, I told you not to talk to us about the future. And Boimler just keeps talking and he goes, you're doing it anyway. And it just keeps going. And then when Boimler and Mariner are on board and they're having a briefing, Pike just stops giving a shit. I don't know if you realize this. Mariner was like, hey, I could help Uhura in linguistics. And Pike's like, you know what? Whatever. It just gets up and leaves in the middle of the briefing just because he's just had enough of their shit.
Yeah. He's like, I've lost all control of my ship to these future people. I do like the fact, though, that like it's a theme throughout the episode where it's all like, they're from the future. They have this knowledge. Their decision-making is based on, this information. I should give them leeway.
Right.
And also, oh shit, now they're doing something ridiculous and they're completely disregarding any sort of temporal sense here. And so there's that constant like back and forth of how to handle the situation and that just constant swing into exasperation by Pike.
Just Pike's, I mean, the acting is just so solid. Frakes I feel like Frakes was probably like, you've had enough of his shit, and you just need to, like, you're like a parent that's kind of you're parenting someone else's child for a minute, and you just need to, like, accept that they're going to be ridiculous. Like, that's how you need to act the scene. And Anselmo was like, yes. Just went with it that way.
Well, I mean, that's how you always deal with other people's children. Because at the end of the day, you don't have to put up with the consequences of the child being ridiculous. That's all on their parents.
Even at the end where Boimler is, like, going through the portal, I think when he's trying to go through the portal, and Pike's like, it's been, and then you think that gap we filled with, it's been a pleasure, but he does not go that route. It's been a interesting experience. And you're just like, yet another instance of Pike just thinking handling Boimler is like stopping the toddler from knocking over furniture.
Going back to the Boimler. Yes.
The Boimler?
Yeah. Boimler interactions. Pike and Boimler.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my god. Like, they're fantastic. And it's like moments where Boimler shows, like, his potential. Especially when he gives the speech to Pike about, like, something so inconsequential. Like, the B plot of this episode.
Yeah.
Is Pike's birthday party. And convincing him to go. Oh, it's so well delivered and so
seriously
good.
What a great, I mean, that was a counterpoint to the humor in this episode was the, like, surprising speech that Boimler makes to Pike about convincing him to appreciate his birthday party or whatever. And that was really solid. Yeah. I kind of teared up a little bit, to be honest. I was like, he's right. And listen to him, Captain Pike.
Yeah, whatever, you freaking softy. I don't even know what to call that. Man up! Jesus!
I have feelings.
Clearly you weren't beaten enough as a child. Don't beat your children, people. That was a joke.
Where are you going with
Please
this?
Don't beat your children. Children do not deserve to be beaten. But what I was going to say is, now I don't even remember what I was going to say.
No. Where were you going with this?
You know what?
You need another. Stop with the hurricanes. It's time to switch to water.
Yeah. No, but I mean, like, that scene is so well delivered, and there is this, like, moment where you can very much see it on Pike's face, right? Where he sees that potential.
Yeah.
And Boimler does that all throughout the series, or all throughout the episode, right? There is the moment where he's convincing the captain to try and negotiate with the Orions based on what he knows, and that realization that, despite my previous fantastic racism, these are actually Orion scientists. I don't know. It's such a fantastic moment, and, like, Boimler has great one at the very, very end when he discovers that Mariner got the assignment because she knew he would love it.
Right.
That moment of discovery and acceptance, it's really good. Like, well put together. And it's not just his, like, acting or his delivery. The writing is good. The directing is good. The scene is well staged. It's well edited. I don't know. I'm fanboying here. Move on.
I wonder because if Frakes directed this episode, I don't think he's directed any Lower Decks. So is he directing the animated portions too? I mean, I guess it's not like he could just offload those particular scenes. I mean, he could have leaned on someone that has more animated experience, but I guess, does he have animated experience now?
Well, I mean, directing in animation is very different than directing in television. They don't even call it a director, right? If I wasn't so drunk, I could tell you what the process is, because I've actually read up on this, but,
I think they do have directors, don't they?
How are you still so coherent? You had a double and I had a single. What is going on here?
I'm 2 slips away from slurring my words. So.
Okay.
Let's see. We're gonna look at this up on the air. I think I'm like 90% sure they're directors. But so where were you going with this? I mean, do you think he leaned on someone else to do the direction, quote unquote?
I think it's like everything we gush about Frakes as a director, but it's a collaborative effort, right? It's
sure.
There's directing, there's editing, there's acting, there's writing, and it all has to come together, you know. And it just did in this episode.
Yeah, they have someone called directors, and according to Wikipedia, at least, they do have directors on this episode, but I don't think Frakes has done one. So, I mean, it's weird. Do you think this will lead to? And we're getting off track, which is fine. But do you think Frakes is going to be like, you know what? I could fucking do directing Lower Decks. I'm going to do it, and we're going to get a Frakes directed episode in season 4 or 5, maybe, of Lower Decks.
I don't care.
After all this gushing, you're like, I don't care.
I just want quality episodes to keep coming out.
Can't argue with that.
I don't care how the sausage is made.
God, there's just so much like little weird one-off things in this episode. How about the one-liners? I mean, I talked before about how this is basically a comedy episode, and they've got like the little one-off jokes. The ones that stood out to me, you guys look very realistic. That kind of edges on a fourth wall breakage.
That is very true. But it also works in the scene when he wakes up and he tries to end the program.
Right. It's like kind of an extension of the same joke.
Yes.
Kind of. I also like the NCC 1701-nothing. And the follow-up was like, what would come after the dash? And then you're just like, I don't know.
You know, that is just such fantastic writing. It is hilarious.
Yeah, it was really good. Got some Trek knowledge in there, too. And I also, one of my other favorites, the one-liners, is, I can hear you. I'm standing right here. And Boimler's like, well, I thought the distance,
but here's the thing. That happens all the time in Trek, right? There's somebody off to the side having this quiet conversation, and you're like, there's like somebody like 5 feet from you. Like, can they not hear you? But I don't know. Like, I've worked in offices where they're like, you can have a quiet conversation, and unless the person's really straining to hear you, they're not going to understand what you're saying. So I kind of wonder. I don't know. It's a pretty funny call out, but don't know how accurate it is.
Yeah, I thought it kind of funnels into the whole like Pike thinking Boimler is just terrible / ridiculous. I enjoyed that. Let's talk about other stuff. There's just so much about this episode. Just little one-off like things I thought about. How about I realized they wanted to kind of, get the guest cast locked down a little bit to just the Warp Core 4. But I love how they send just the 4 ensigns down to check the powerful, but, probably inactive time portal. Just put an ensign in charge. Everything's fine.
Yeah, and they even talk about how, like, they were just going to send, whoever to do it until Mariner interfered. But you know what? I mean, like, it was dead. Everybody thought it was dead. So why is that surprising?
Just nobody took holocamera photos, and they just didn't realize how to activate it.
I do wonder, like, is this the first visit since Pike and his crew? Or have other people visited? Because I gotta believe there would be, like, linguistic experts, there would be tech experts. But, maybe it's one of those things where, like, temporal investigations is like, oh, no, it's been translated as this is a time portal, it's off limits.
It's funny, because they, in the Enterprise episode, they've expended all of the fuel to activate the time portal, and then they find the component from the NX Enterprise.
Yep.
And they use that to activate the time portal again. But apparently they just like left it with enough fuel to activate again by the time that the Cerritos crew comes around. Or did some other person just come around and be like, you know what? I'm going to like add random horonium to the time portal, but then not activate it.
But the thing is, that's unlikely because in the episode they say that horonium is super rare. Like, it's just not something that's available.
Yeah. So it's just left over from the NX component when Enterprise put fuel in it.
That's got to be the assumption.
They're just like, whatever, goodbye.
Yep.
We'll leave enough fuel in there for one more thing, but I guess we'll just leave.
Well, maybe they didn't know it had enough fuel. Maybe they didn't know how much fuel it used.
That could be it.
They sent the people back and they said, let's get the fuck out of here before they come back.
Well, we just talked about the camera a second ago. So first off, I have questions about why holocameras exist, but you know what? They were made canon in Voyager, so that's fine. One interesting thing about that is the viewfinder view for the camera. There's a shot where Rutherford is aiming the camera at Boimler, and it has his name and rank in it. And that reference is basically a reference that's taken straight from how the viewfinder appears in Voyager. Kind of interesting that they just ripped it all wholesale, even though holocameras shouldn't really exist. Change my mind.
Wait, so like, what kind of camera should exist?
I don't know.
Regular
Should cameras exist?
I mean, why would they not?
I don't know.
Like, I've really
How do they
lost
preserve memories in the future? They should. It feels like there should be something 3D instead of cameras, like tricorders.
Oh, you mean like a holocamera? So
is it a camera at that point?
It's a camera. It's just taking a 3D image. So like you're like, oh, you remember that time we went to, SETI Alpha 7 and visited the dunes? And you're like, oh, right. I love that trip. Well, let's load it up in the holodeck, and it'll be like we're on vacation again.
I feel like in the 24th century, there's going to be an equivalent of like gathering everyone to like look at your vacation slides.
There's not an equivalent of that now. That died 30 years ago.
Is that dead now? Now it's on social media.
It's all social media, so you have a choice to walk away.
That's true. I can only hope there's an equivalent of that in the 24th century.
Yes.
Something else I noticed when Boimler shows up and Number One calls the Enterprise, she refers to herself as Number One. She says Number One to Enterprise. So does she talk about herself in third person like that? Like shit. I think Pike calls her that. Would like other characters and even herself call her Number One, or has this happened other places in Strange New Worlds?
I'm going to assume yes, and I just never noticed.
They just call her Number One.
Yeah.
Like Uhura's like, hey, Number One.
I feel like no, that's probably not. I think it's more like in that. TNG where like the captain calls her Number One, and
yeah.
Yes.
I mean, Riker would never refer to himself as Number One.
You know what? I don't know. I feel like Riker would probably refer to himself as Number Two and then snicker.
Is that where we're going with this episode right now? Is toilet humor?
Oh my god. Yeah, I mean, we are where we're at. I don't know what else to say.
Oh, we do need to talk about that. We've talked about several times before recording this episode is the presence of the Setlik system. So in this episode, the Enterprise in the Strange New Worlds universe is carrying a grain shipment that is destined for Setlik 2, but of course they trade it to the Orions. But the Setlik system is kind of famous for its like off-screen mention in Star Trek.
It is a huge part of O'Brien's backstory.
Mm-hmm.
Setlik 3 massacre is a definitive moment in the Cardassian Federation War. And I kind of love, like, there's that interaction where Boimler is talking about, well, I mean, is there more grain? And it's like, no, there was never more grain. That was not an option. And he realizes that, they're going to have to be, like, relocated at best. And I'm like, I'm wondering if in that moment...
Setlik 3?
Yeah, are they going to get relocated to Setlik 3? And now Boimler thinks he's responsible for the Setlik 3 massacre. I don't know if that was the intent they were going for, but if it was, I mean, kudos. Like, that is such a, like, it's not even like a deep cut, but it is a great, like, moment where, it's the whole Wrath of Khan issue, where Wrath of Khan is a great movie. Khan has good motives, and, the interactions between Khan and Kirk are fantastic. The story's good. But if you watch Space Seed, you're like, there's a deeper moment to this. Kirk made a promise to Khan and broke it. Kirk is kind of responsible. And it's that same thing in this episode, if that's what they were going for. If you're a Star Trek fan, if you get the reference, if you're, one of those people who likes DS9 a lot, or O'Brien as a character, there's that moment where you realize what Boimler's thinking here.
Totally.
Or maybe I'm just thinking too much into it. I don't know.
I think Miggly Mo is going to have his calendar full.
I killed him, Miggly Mo! It's my fault! Setlik 3, I did it!
Well, you got to think about this like an orange. You take the peel off and, insert food reference here.
Just because you made the souffle doesn't mean the food poisoning was your fault.
That's right. That doesn't seem reasonable. Anyway, it's funny because the Setlik planets or system have become this kind of go-to like off, like never on screen seen location where like if you need a thing to happen, then Setlik is the place to do it. I was looking at the Memory Alpha entries for this, and it's shown up on computer displays in shows like Picard and I think Discovery as well. Just to like show up in like a computer display or whatever it is. So it's kind of becoming like this weird like like, oh, I need a system, but I can't, like, we're not going to show it. What should it be? And they just like go to the Setlik well.
Yes.
And then they just show that on screen.
Because that makes sense. But you know what? As long as we're talking about Setlik and we're talking about the Cardassian War, which leads us into Cardassians. No, this isn't a stretch. Yes. So, when they're trying to decipher the text on the time portal,
yes,
which, huge anticlimax.
Yeah. Mariner says it translates to, this is a time portal.
Yeah. But when Uhura hands over the pad, she is reading about Cardassian language and then Bajoran language.
Yeah.
Which the Cardassian language makes sense, right? There was a Cardassian living on Vulcan in, I think it's this era or the Enterprise era. I can't remember which. Oh. But it's somewhere in that time frame. So it makes sense that they would know about Cardassia. And they'd probably even, like, met Cardassians as this, distant empire, maybe.
Right.
But it seems weird that they would know about Bajorans. Everything points to Bajor being a one-world, non-spacefaring empire at this point. They did obviously have their, Tach-y-on light sail ships that, got to Cardassia. But I don't think that was like a well-known thing. It wasn't like a well-published thing.
It kind of just, I feel like they just kind of squeezed it in there because it could make sense as like another species, so why not? But yeah, I mean, we just don't have enough information, right? Like, it's impossible to know exactly how much they, the Federation knew about Bajor. Apparently, I mean, it's canon now, I guess. Federation knew that Bajor existed. For all we know that, we've learned about Bajoran language secondhand.
Yeah, it's entirely possible.
Could be. Let's talk about log entries. It's funny because we just talked about recently in the comics where somebody's making a log entry via their Commbadge. And I think Boimler briefly does the same thing in this episode. Did you notice where Boimler's like in the briefing room, the captain's ready room / briefing room, and he goes, Ensign's log starting the past. He must be making a log entry via his Commbadge, and we've only ever seen that in the comics.
And that actually makes sense. I feel like, the Commbadge has become like the catch-all. I can even see it as being like the officer's black box.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, the more I think about it, the more it makes sense, right? It's weird because you've only ever seen them make captain's logs on their home ship, but I totally agree that doing it via Commbadge seems to make sense, right? It's like a little computer on your chest. Like, why not?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, we're not that far. Obviously, we don't have universal translators. We don't have satellite phones that, are the size of microchips. But we're not that far from, miniaturized computers now. I mean, like recording devices that can store huge chunks of audio, fingertip sized, So what's the difference?
Totally. It's just it's cool to see something that started in the comics get to live action like this. It's pretty neat. But speaking of that, in the same scene where Boimler literally says Riker as he swings his leg onto the saddle. Apparently also ad-libbed, by the way.
Totally improvised, apparently, which... good on him, man.
Pretty amazing, yeah. Good for him for working that in there. I think it's one of the funnier jokes in the episode, too. Ooh, how about the presence of Tritriticale
instead of I know, I love that. Fantastic callback.
Little toss reference in there. Yeah, totally. That's something that you would see in Lower Decks, but it's made it over to these Strange New Worlds.
Well, and they do a good job of doing it too, right? Where they're like, "Oh yeah, we got to deliver this Tritriticale to this location," and that was the whole thing in TOS. It was grain. It was specifically engineered.
One thing I wanted to mention is the time portal is apparently ancient Nausicaan. And does that make sense? Nausicaans in, the whole, TNG-ish era have been just like a kind of like a muscly enforcer type race that is there to kind of rough you up and stab Picard through the chest so he needs a new heart. And that's basically it. Even in Enterprise, the Nausicaans show up and they're nothing more than petty raiders. Like it's even implied that their technology is stolen. So it wouldn't be surprising if their language was stolen too, right? Because she says she got a Domjot table, but it wasn't Nausicaan, right? It was something older. So maybe they'll do something with that eventually. Like maybe we'll meet the Nausicaans and it'll turn out that, oh yeah, their whole technology is stolen and their culture of thievery is because they were a failed species that is only surviving by taking from others. Yeah, I mean, what a antithetical to what we know of Nausicaans now. I mean, apparently way back in the old days, they had enough tech to create a time portal, and nothing else is left of their ancient civilization. They're basically just raiders now. So, kind of crazy to think about. You know what? And maybe they were some great ancient civilization, and the temporal Cold War doomed them to mediocrity. Indeed. Yeah, victim of the temporal Cold War. I like that. I don't. It's terrible. Let's talk about the engineering scene. And by that, I mean, so Boimler is feeling like he has lost all hope. He and Mariner are stuck there forever. He goes to engineering to seek some respite at the warp core, as is tradition for Boimler. He, historically has he likes to go hang out by the warp core just to be, calmed by its strumming and whatnot. And there he has a conversation with Pelia, the new engineer for Strange New Worlds this season. And I have very mixed feelings about this conversation because she has a very, she has this conversation with the agenda of like, you've got to be what you want to be. Even if you don't feel like you're what you want to be, you got to be it until at one point you become that person or that person becomes you. And I have concerns because she's basically legitimizing the notion of faking it until you make it. What are you talking about, dude? That is my ethos. That is my credo. I loved this scene. I've seen too many people in the professional workplace that are faking it without the skill set required for their position. But she's not talking about skill set. She's talking about morality in this scene. That's true. Yeah. Fake it till you make it, where, you're basically conning your way up a ladder. Yeah. No, that's a terrible message. That's not what she's talking about. But you think she's doing it from a morality level only. Like, you should not apply her advice. But, like, it's not just morality. It's like confidence. Okay. It's doing the right thing. It's confidence. Okay. We're all flawed people. Morality. But, and this goes back to like a big theme of Star Trek is, you're striving to be the best you can be. So, all of society is striving to be better. We're chasing the angels of our better nature. And I love that because that is the message she is saying, right? It's not fake it till you make it, con your way up the ladder. It's, you aren't that person that you want to be, but just keep trying to be, keep trying to be a better person. And at some point you'll realize you are a better person. Oh, you know what? You've made me feel better about the scene because when she is going on and I kind of interpreted it as fake it till you make it, I'm sure we have all seen in the workplace just people that should not be in positions they should be because they're not qualified to be there, but they have kind of fooled the right people into thinking they should be there. But if you're saying that's not this, she's kind of talking, you're saying she's kind of talking in a more, personality or morality level. Yeah. I think I could see that. Like she's saying to Boimler that he needs to do what he thinks is right. Yes, exactly. I'm fine with that. Yes. Okay, great. That takes us to the next scene where Boimler and Mariner are thinking about sending communications to the Orions in the Enterprise shuttle bay. I less want to think about that and more want to think about we actually get to see in modern Trek how the shuttle bay of the Constitution class Enterprise looks. And it is surprisingly close to how we've seen the shuttle bay look in the original series and in the animated series, which I mean to say, it's like this ginormous cavernous interior with like 4 shuttlecraft in it.
Yes.
And it's rare that we get to see this kind of interesting look at the interior of the ship. Quite a feat of CGI, by the way. If you look at that shot where it's this exterior shot of the Enterprise where the shuttle bay doors are open and you can see inside, pretty neat.
That whole scene was definitely well put together.
Absolutely.
Seeing shuttles taking off from the interior of the shuttle, seeing the external shuttle bay shot, it was well put together. That's all I can say about it.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting to see, like, how, if you think about how it looks from the outside, how much of the star drive section is taken up by the shuttlecraft, or the shuttle bay in general.
I do kind of wonder if the star drive section is supposed to be like the TMP star drive section, where the engine, or not the engine, the antimatter reactor, right? That whole long column thing that you see in later series, that exists in the TMP Enterprise, and it runs the length of the neck. And I'm kind of wondering if it's supposed to be the same way in this series.
Interesting. I don't know if they've really published any like internal schematics of the Strange New Worlds Enterprise, have they? Not that I know of, at least.
Well, I mean, they've probably done the MSD, and we just didn't do research because
this is a Lower Decks show, after all.
Yep.
Yeah. It's crazy because it seems like at least half of that section of the ship is made up of just the shuttle bay from that exterior shot alone. So, kind of interesting to see that show up.
Beautiful scene, though. Loved the scene from beginning to end.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, totally. But from there, we get to, after Boimler and Mariner are caught, and they come up with a way of, the solution, the Chekhov's gun with the NX Enterprise solution. Boimler has prepared an apology limerick. And what the fuck is that, by the way?
I am betting that is Mariner fucking with him.
You just think she told him like, hey, you need to come up with an apology limerick, and
yeah, like that was the norm in this era. Trust her, she's all about it. Though, as good as the scene is, because the whole thing is, it's like, oh yeah, when they're building a new ship, they start with a piece of its predecessor,
right?
And that predecessor is a weird little bottle thing. Like, how the fuck does that work? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like,
yeah, what was
you would
that?
Expect
they
it
just
to
pull
be
it
like,
out with nothing going wrong.
You would expect it to be like a beam or something, right? But no, it's a little bottle thing. Like, did they just like put that in space and then start building around it, and that's how it was the first part of the ship? Like, it makes no goddamn sense. Fucking A.
I feel like someone just does it, and they're like, they check a box, and their job is done.
Yeah. Like, there's no way that was added beforehand. That had to be added.
There's that joke in there where Pelia is like, don't do that to my floor. I need that.
I walk
and I just
on
like, that was the one joke that like does not land that well.
No way. That joke is fantastic. What are you
really?
talking
You
about?
like that one?
Oh my God.
I need that floor.
Yeah, she's all like, I walk on it. It's great. I hope it turns into like a running gag that one panel is just like squeaky from there on out.
It just squeaks whenever they walk on it now. Some
and like
sound
Pelia is
designers.
always upset about it. It would be fantastic.
If you didn't have to rip up the floor, this floor would be quiet like it should be.
Yes.
But yeah, let's talk about the astra per aspera.
I don't want to talk
pin-up
about
poster
this.
thing.
It's such a great callback. It's so well done.
It's so good.
Oh.
Yeah. That episode in Stranger World is so good. It's interesting that even if you're quick to pause, like I am, and go frame by frame, you can see this poster show up in Boimler's locker in the cold open. You can see it pop up there in the locker. And of course, you get the better look at it later in the episode. Fucking great. Especially with the courtroom episode about this, where this shows up earlier in the Stranger World season. What a fucking great inclusion.
And
man.
it is so
This is another part where I choked up a little bit. I thought it was really good.
Okay, I didn't choke up because I'm not a little girl. But, oh man, now I'm going to get canceled by the internet. Hey man, little girls are tough. You don't know. Anyways, No, it was such a great, like, it tells a story, right? Of, Una is like, she's gonna be kicked out, and she gives this impassioned plea about what the Federation is supposed to be all about, and in the end she wins her court case. But here's the thing, even if she won her court case in her era, there's probably a lot of people that have a lot of animosity towards her because of her background and because of that stigma.
Sure.
But because the Federation is this, it's this progressive nation that is always trying to do better.
Yeah.
150 years later, she is this icon of, forgiveness and incorporation and, understanding. And it's fantastic. It's so well put together.
Yeah. I mean, we're kind of verging into talking about Stranger Worlds here, but what a great fucking episode that courtroom drama was. And having it show up in the Stranger Worlds component is just so good.
And that's it.
Such a feel-good moment.
It was truly a crossover because it continues the story of Strange New Worlds. I will say, though, I'm not sure it's going to add much back into Lower Decks. But we'll see.
What do you mean? Like having it show up as more Boimler's motivation or something?
Well, there was a lot of progression for the Strange New Worlds storyline in this episode. And a lot of good, like, references and resolution to things that happened previously. Turning points happen. But the question is, I mean, obviously we've seen they make a callback to the episode in the trailer, but is this episode actually going to have any effect on the characters or the storyline going forward?
Yeah, in fact, I was going to let's talk about this now. Like, apparently, according to the resolution of the episode in the Lower Deck style, they just didn't report any of the time travel shenanigans. They just didn't report it, and so no one cares?
I don't know, because Mariner says they're not supposed to talk about it. So maybe they did get a visit from Temporal Investigation.
I feel like by context, in the, the Lower Deck style stuff towards the end of the episode, they just didn't report it. And, like you said, in the season 4 trailer, they mentioned the, it's like that Pike thing we're not supposed to talk about. So they just didn't report it?
I don't know.
They just did, but it's top secret.
I think we'll have to wait and see.
We'll have to wait and see, indeed. I think I'm out of things. Is there anything that you noticed about this episode that we haven't talked about yet?
You know what? I think we got everything except for one real problem I had with the episode. It is the greatest flaw.
What problem was that?
So we need to talk about your boy Rutherford.
Oh, what about him?
Does he pronounce it Tech-y-ons?
Tech-y-ons, I noticed that.
I don't think you did. I think you just glossed over and no, Rutherford's great. He wouldn't do something
Rutherford
like that.
Could do no wrong. So
yes.
If he's saying Tech-y-ons, then that's how it's pronounced.
You know what?
I'm sticking with it.
It just, I don't know why, but I just couldn't get past that. It really was just really Rutherford? Every time I see him from now on, all I'm going to think is Tech-y-ons.
Tech-y-ons?
Yeah, it's so much, so terrible.
He's got to scan those Tech-y-ons so he can show them to, Billups.
But, you know what, though? I guess, you know what? At least, it wasn't animated characters interacting with live-action characters. So, yeah. I mean, that's definitely a positive, but...
Totally.
Oh, shit. Does that mean it was enchanted all along? Oh!
I think it could be.
Fuck! All right, I'm out of here before someone starts singing. So... Until next time, follow us on, I don't know, what is it, X or Twitter now?
It's X now,
X,
yeah.
God, well, I mean, I guess we'll let the courts figure it out. But anyways, we're at Lower Dorks, or, if you're not into the whole social media thing and you are so inclined, if you're listening from 150 years in the future, you can catch us next to the time portal behind Murphy's Pub.
Doesn't that violate some temporal accords or... kind of agreement? I feel like I would not be stuck behind some bad Irish pub.
It's 2020s, dude. There's no temporal agents to wag a finger at us. We're good.
No, in that case, let's have some Guinness.